I was about to get married when my 25-year-old daughter confessed she was pregnant with my fiancé's baby. 2 years later, she's a single mom begging for my help. I never thought I would be posting something like this, but I need to get this off my chest. I've been sitting here for hours trying to figure out how to even start writing this. I guess I'll begin with some background. I got married to my first husband, Tom, when I was very young, just 19. We were college sweethearts, and everyone told us we were too young, but we didn't listen. I got pregnant with Juliet within the first year of our marriage. Being young parents was tough, but we managed somehow. Tom went into investment banking and started making good money, but he was never around. He'd leave before dawn and come back after midnight. Even on weekends, he was always networking or attending important client meetings. I raised Juliet mostly by myself, and we became incredibly close. She was such a sweet child, always trying to make me happy, especially when I was sad about Tom's absence. As she grew older, she became my best friend. We would have movie nights when Tom was working late, which was almost every night. We went shopping together, had spa days, and shared everything, or so I thought. Tom and I finally divorced 5 years ago. It wasn't dramatic. We had just grown so far apart that we were basically strangers living in the same house. The divorce was amicable, and we split everything fairly. Tom moved to a different city for work, and Juliet stayed with me while finishing college. After the divorce, I threw myself into my career. I had gotten my MBA while still married but hadn't really used it because Tom's income was enough for us. I started working at a corporate consulting firm and quickly moved up the ranks. That's where I met Keith. Keith was different from Tom in every way. He was attentive, present, and actually wanted to spend time with me. He would bring me coffee in the morning just the way I liked it, leave little notes on my desk, and genuinely listened when I talked about my day. We started dating 3 years ago, and it felt like I was finally getting a second chance at happiness. The best part was how well Keith got along with Juliet. She was 22 when we started dating, and I was worried it might be awkward, but they hit it off immediately. They shared the same taste in music and books, and Keith often helped her with career advice since she was just starting out in marketing. Looking back now, I realized they got along a little too well. Keith proposed 6 months ago during a weekend trip to the beach. It was perfect: sunset, waves crashing, and a beautiful ring. When we told Juliet, she seemed thrilled. She immediately offered to help with the wedding planning, saying she wanted it to be perfect for me because I deserved it. She even insisted on being my maid of honor, saying she couldn't imagine anyone else standing beside me on my special date. Since I was busy with a big project at work, Juliet and Keith took charge of most of the wedding planning. They spent hours together picking out flowers, meeting vendors, and arranging everything. I thought it was sweet how much effort they were putting in to make my day special. God, I was so blind. Yesterday, just one day before the wedding, everything fell apart. I was at home, going through my vows one last time, when Juliet showed up. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red and puffy, and her hands were shaking. At first, I thought she was having second thoughts about her speech or something wedding-related. I wish that had been the case. She sat down on the couch and started crying. I tried to comfort her, but she pulled away. Then she said the words that destroyed everything. "Mom, I'm pregnant. It's Keith's baby." I thought I had misheard her. I asked her to repeat what she had said, hoping I was experiencing some sort of stress-induced hallucination. But she said it again, and this time she added that she and Keith had been seeing each other for the past 4 months. She explained that it started innocently, just talking during wedding planning sessions, but then it escalated into coffee dates, which turned into lunch dates, and then I felt like I couldn't breathe. I called Keith immediately and told him to come home. He must have heard something in my voice because he said he'd be there in 15 minutes. But those 15 minutes felt like an eternity. Juliet sat there crying while I stood by the window, feeling like my whole world was crumbling. When Keith arrived, I expected him to deny everything. Instead, he walked in, took one look at Juliet's tear-streaked face, and said, "You told her." Just like that, as if they were discussing a weather update. I lost it. I started screaming at him, demanding to know how he could do this to me. I asked him how long this had been going on and if he had ever really loved me, or if I was just a way to get close to my daughter. Keith tried to explain. He said he hadn't planned for this to happen and that he genuinely loved me when he proposed. But spending time with Juliet during the wedding planning made him realize he had feelings for her too. He claimed they had tried to fight their feelings but couldn't help falling in love. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I threw them both out of my house. I couldn't stand to look at either of them. I called my best friend, Sarah, who came over immediately. She helped me send messages to all the wedding guests, explaining that the wedding was canceled. I couldn't bring myself to tell them why. I was too ashamed. Later that evening, Juliet came back. She tried to explain, saying she never meant to hurt me and that she and Keith had real feelings for each other. She claimed the pregnancy wasn't planned and that they had used protection, but these things happen. She actually had the nerve to ask for my blessing, saying she didn't want to lose her mother over this. I told her she should have thought about that before sleeping with my fiancé. I reminded her of all the times she sat with me, planning my wedding, knowing she was betraying me. I asked her how she could look me in the eye every day, knowing what she was doing. She just cried and said she was sorry, but that she couldn't help who she fell in love with. Keith came by the next day while I was at work and moved all his things out. He left his key and a letter, but I didn't read it. I threw it in the fireplace along with all our photos. Sarah stayed with me to help deal with all the wedding cancellation arrangements. The venue demanded full payment since it was such short notice, and the caterers were only willing to refund half. I blocked both Keith and Juliet's numbers and avoided social media because every photo of us together felt like a knife to my heart. 2 weeks later, Keith's sister Amanda sent me an invitation to Juliet's baby shower. It was a pink envelope with flowery lettering, cheerfully inviting the grandmother-to-be to celebrate the new arrival. The audacity left me speechless. I called Amanda, furious, but she defended Keith and Juliet, saying they were young and in love and that I should accept their relationship for my grandchild's sake. Shortly after, my ex-husband Tom called. Apparently, Juliet had gone crying to him about how I was being unreasonable and refusing to speak to her. Tom, who had been an absent father for most of Juliet's life, had the audacity to blame me for her behavior. He said if I had been a more attentive mother, Juliet wouldn't have developed daddy issues and fallen for an older man. I reminded him that his absence during Juliet's childhood was the reason I had to play both roles, and he had no right to lecture me on parenting. The final blow came when one of my junior colleagues, Maria, came to my office. She looked nervous, but said she felt I deserved to know the truth. She had seen Keith and Juliet having lunch together months before Keith proposed to me. She even remembered seeing them holding hands under the table. This means their affair had started long before I had any idea. Hearing this shattered me all over again. Every romantic date, every promise Keith made, it was all a lie. Sarah suggested I talk to a lawyer about recovering the wedding costs, but I couldn't bring myself to fight that battle. I sold the engagement ring Keith gave me to cover some of the expenses. It felt symbolic to use the proceeds from his lies to pay for the wedding that never was. 6 months later, Juliet showed up at my door unannounced, holding her baby boy. She looked exhausted and desperate. She confessed that Keith had left her after discovering through a paternity test that he wasn't the father. She admitted that she had lied to him and that the real father, a man named Mike, wanted nothing to do with her or the baby. She begged me to let her and the baby move in with me, saying she had nowhere else to go. She claimed she had changed and realized how selfish she had been. But I stood firm. I reminded her of the betrayal she had orchestrated and how she had destroyed not just my relationship with Keith, but my trust in her as my daughter. I told her that while I felt sorry for her situation, it was a direct consequence of her actions. I refused to let her move in. Now, 2 years after everything, I have finally found peace. I got another promotion at work, bought a small vacation home by the lake, and joined a hiking group where I've made new friends. I've even started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but it feels good to move on. As for Juliet, she is struggling as a single mom, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. While I occasionally see her at family gatherings, our relationship remains distant. I don't hold hatred in my heart, but I have learned the importance of boundaries. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone back into your life. It means letting go of the pain and moving forward. This chapter of my life has been a painful lesson in trust, betrayal, and self-respect. But I've come out stronger on the other side, and for now, that's enough.